Steiner. He's going to talk about specifically continuous manufacturing and its utilization for melt granulation and melt extrusion in pharma. Dr. Steiner is a seasoned professional with over 30 years of, doesn't look like, but over 30 years of experience in sales. Currently leads the sales efforts at Pharmatech Associates as the head of sales and practice lead for pharmaceutical continuous manufacturing. He has extensive career, including notable leadership roles such as heading Lystritz, as a matter of fact, one of the biggest manufacturers of extruders out there in the pharma. And also he has worked with GIA, which we have representation here today as well. Distinguished expert in continuous manufacturing, highly relevant to the type of work that we are doing in here. Without further ado, I will ask Dr. Steiner to help us to better understand the new trends in continuous manufacturing. Thank you.
Yeah, for a little correction, I'm not a doctor. I'm even not a PhD. I'm just a German engineer, mechanical engineer. Because I learned you have to add this, because some in North America think if you say you're an engineer, you're kind of a construction guy or you build buildings. Whereas engineer is a very important title in Germany, and I'm a proud mechanical engineer. But thank you for this. Let me quickly get my computer going. And I hope everything works as expected. This looks good. Okay, many thanks for everyone listening to my presentation. It's an honor back after a few years not participating on this kind of conferences about bioavailability and sustainability advancement, etc., because this was my time before I joined GEA. This was my time when I talked about melt extrusion and all of this, and I'm very glad to be back to this topic, and I will give you a little background why I want to make this bridge now between what we heard this morning and this great science and my topic. Where are the baby boomers in the room? Who knows this gentleman on the hands up? Yes, there's a few. So Jimi Hendrix, yeah, he was very influential at this time. And he used this instrument, which became, from that point on, actually a standard tool in the rock music world. And everybody, even if you're not a musician, I'm sure you will recognize this kind of a design. Whether you take it left or right hand, doesn't matter, it became a synonym. The Stratocaster, I do not want to make advertisement for Fender, but it's a remarkable thing happened because, there's a patent behind it, and it was actually just to make this instrument ready and tough enough for working on a stage, on the travel and touring aspects, and to sound every night the same way. This was the basic idea of Leo Fender, who designed this instrument. Who knows this gentleman? Eddie Van Halen, yep. So he put this to another level of playing. But the Stratocaster was not sufficient for his way of playing. So he friggled around. He worked on this instrument to make it fitting to his purpose to play. And he basically born what is called the Frankenstein strut. Everybody knows Frankenstein. Frankenstein strut. But you wonder what has all of this to do now with the topic I want to talk about. Many, many, many years later, even this kind of a Frankenstein strut found his way to be standard, to be standardized, that you can buy it from shelf, and it's got the name the power strut. What is now the bridge? And I wasn't sure 2 days ago how to build the bridge to the next topic. But I will, because I wanted to just open your mind now from all the topics we have heard this morning to this thing. Look at it. Who knows this picture?
Another guitar?
Huh?
Another guitar?
Who knows it? Just one lady? Okay, so don't say anything. Don't say anything. You know it as well. Oh, wow. Okay, a few. I thought so. I hoped so. But let's ask the others. So, what is this going to be? It's an extruder, yes. And what else do you see? Feeders. And what else do you see? Rollers. And a cooler, a cooling belt. What you see on this picture was very influential to me as well, even if I'm a musician, but I'm also an engineer, as I told you, and I saw this picture about 1990s when I started my career in this industry as a mechanical engineer, and it was shown to me from a company called Knoll AG. Knoll AG over the years got sold to become later Abbott and AbbVie. And whoever knows Germany, the location of Knoll, that was just across the river of BASF. And they had the famous copovidone. And they had tons of twin screw extruders in their property. So for the idea to cross the river to make something happen like melt extrusion nowadays, this is basically the Earth's shaking point of what was introduced as the silver bullet of manufacturing of all solid dosage drugs in the 90s. And the product with this got the famous name Calitra. We heard about a couple of times. So this was the first time I saw that thing. And now this is continuous manufacturing. This was actually the idea. I was working about 17 years on twin screw extrusion of all kinds of applications, and I heard about solid dispersion, solubility enhancement, controlled truck release. As a mechanical engineer, this was an entire new world for me. The only thing I saw was that the chemical industry is using this technology on a daily basis and not even talking about it so much. It was the purpose of this thing to manufacture products with consistent quality on a daily basis 24/7. If you look closer to this picture, you will see something more. There are loss and weight feeders. There are 3 loss and weight feeders. Imagine 3 loss and weight feeders feeding 3 ingredients into a twin screw extruder without, Andy, what is missing? Pre-blending, yes. For chemical engineer at this level or for process engineer at this level, hey, the twin screw extruder can do that. I do not need a blender unless you're coming with 12 excipients. So another remarkable part is twin screws, co-rotating twin screws. Another of my famous questions is, why the heck do you need 2 screws? Huh?
For very efficient mixing.
This was a byproduct. Any other idea? It was actually an invention of a guy at the company Bayer, just a little bit downstream the river. Because this guy had the idea, I want to clean the single screw because I have to clean and wipe out the single screw. And then he put, at this time they had no computer stuff and nothing, so he just had a drawing board. And he's saying, okay, I need something to wipe off my single screw while this single screw is moving. And then he said, oh wow, this looks like a second screw. So he put these two screws next to one another, and he said, oh, now I can wipe off, I can clean the screws, because it's self-emptying. And at the same time, he also found, wow, I can now much more efficiently blend and mix. I can put shear in something that I can melt it. And now my bridge again, I do not like the term hot melt extrusion. It's just me. You don't like it either, yeah? I know, it's melt extrusion. Because the shear force of the extruder, the shear is melting, not the temperature. The temperature which is applied is to balance the temperature profile. So you can melt something with very little shear if it is low melting. We had always to argue hot, oh, everybody got scared, but nobody was talking about the residence time. What you see here, this takes seconds to get a finished product. So the API may not even feel it until it's done. It goes into a die head. You can't possibly see here. This is why it is extrusion, yeah? I put force. This makes now the thing different to melt granulation. Have you ever talked about this? What is the difference between a melt granulation and a melt extrusion? But?
You're melting one of them.
Okay, I moved on from the company Leistritz, talking almost 20 years about twin screws, and then my dear colleagues from GEA said, Richard, never use the word extrusion anymore. It's a twin screw granulator. I said, what is, I see two screws. Say, yeah, but hey, extrusion, you put force to something, you form something out. I said, yeah, and granulation? Yeah, you just make agglomerates. Ah, okay, I said, Now the question, knowing how these two screws are working, what is the difference between a twin screw granulator and a twin screw extruder? So? Okay, first of all, the die head, of course. You have to build up a pressure gradient to get the material through to this die head because there's resistance, because you want to form out something. Not with the granulator. The granulator has zero pressure drop at the end, which is then the consequent number two. You see this huge drive on the back end of this machine? This is electric power like this, because these machines are built to melt also high viscous materials, but not for granulator. I have a tiny small motor on it, 2-something kilowatt, turning, just touching, just gently build some granules and hope to don't get them distracted when they are out. On top of that, these machines are usually much longer than the granulators. And now, not to make a story even longer, because time is running out as I'm getting excited to talk about twin screws. Usually, these twin screws for granulation are tiny, 20 L/D maximum, whereas these machines are 36, 38, 30, 40, or whatever. Because what you can do with these machines, you can combine unit operations in one to the next. You can basically, with one setup, feed, blend, melt, getting air out. You can even dry it to a certain extent. And there are nowadays, as I saw recently on a conference, there are first materials coming out where you basically do all the granulation in one unit with even a dryer at the end. That the material comes ready, granulated. So there are a lot of opportunities in that. And then you can go straight into the end form. And this is what I like on this picture as well. There's these rollers. One more slide. This was to me also surprising at this time. I say, oh, this is a cool idea. Huh? I go into this roller, and this roller had cavities, and there are products coming out. And I saw it with my own eyes. This is how they did it at the beginning with Calitra. This is not kidding, this is true. And this became a very influential product. Because of the Covo-Bindone, then there's something more happens, and now I'm gently sliding into the continuous story. Because, of course, they put patents proudly out and say, okay, Covo-Bindone, and so we do melt granulation, Solix. They covered basically the whole space, and nobody else could do similar thing. This is why you haven't heard a lot over multiple years, except if you look to the timeline, you see the AbbVie products came out step by step by step, one after the other, because they used these technologies, or this technology, which others couldn't do. In parallel, sorry that Jim D'Annunzio is no more around, because he knows exactly what happened then on the other side, because Merck Sharp and Dome, nowadays MSD, also took on and developed products in different kinds, but they kind of used the same principles and the same ideas. A little bit later, a company Grünenthal from Germany came out with something which was called Intec. I saw that, and this was great, because what they did, they extruded a strand, they chopped the strand very precisely, and after this was cool, they punched it in a compression machine just to make it look like a tablet. And this was a painkiller product which you couldn't dissolve. Drug abuse prevention. It was not commercially successful. Nonetheless, the process was equally cool, I found. So you have the extruder, blend, mix, make a rod. The finished product, just half of the room of this. There's the company PMRS outside, the contract manufacturer. They had one of these lines installed. Because it got approval all over the world, it was licensed to J&J and so forth and so forth. This was perfect continuous manufacturing to a time when nobody spoke about continuous manufacturing. And this is my point. When I then joined my friends at GEA, everybody talked about Vertex. And it took me a while to comprehend, say, why is this so different? I'm now working for another company because I wanted, curious as I am, I wanted to see what's now going on here with wet granulation and with all of the other technologies. And everybody talked about unit operations, put them next to another. But only from the powder to the coated tablet. If you go further to the standards like ASTM, etc., and now also ICHQ13, what you see in long sentences was just limiting the Conti idea to unit operation, to one and another, but not necessarily talking about the intrinsic continuous flow regime, which was seen on the first picture. So the original idea of continuous flow versus a continuous pharmaceutical manufacturing process strain is a bit a different story. This is why I haven't heard from one or the other side while working on one or the other side. And then in 2000, when was Vertex, Andy? 2012, 14, I just touched base with you guys. I saw this Vertex system, and I say, to my point, this was not so much continuous manufacturing as I have expected. And I couldn't even talk like this to my former colleagues because they said, Richard, this is the greatest. It's fantastic. I say, yeah, but is this really Conti? Because actually the idea is you want to control a process while it's operating. You need a very fast reacting process, which is reacting to the change of the parameters and not just waiting when one unit operation is ready and the next comes. So you, back to this picture I showed you, a continuous process is so dense into one and another that you can control indeed the feeder and you create the change of your product immediately seconds later. But if you have many unit operations, that's a different thing. It takes much longer. It takes minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, etc. So I always found a little bit, this is Conti, but we talked about this. I don't want to touch on this except one point, going back to granulation. The twin screw is basically swimming in the product. So the product is the lubricant to the barrel. You have different gap sizes, but the product is actually the lubricant to make sure that not steel is touching steel, which you sometimes can hear if you have a wet granulation product and you turn the water off. With a melt granulated product, it's different, because these machines are made for melt. Think about it. They're perfectly balanced as long as you have a lubricant in it. This is why you see usually on the twin screw granulator that the screw tips are put in bearings. They're not swimming free, they are guided. Whereas in a twin screw extruder, they are swimming in the melt, and the back pressure from the die head is keeping them in place. Why is this important? Because if you go to the end product, you need to make sure that you have enough pressure drop to form out a product, whether this is a film or whether this is a rod or whatever you can do with that. I already did some historic review, and hopefully my time is not running too fast. So I tried to map this out always. On the left side, you have unit operations, so continuous processes in the range of unit operations. So this is the Abbott, AbbVie, Calitra case. Under today's point of view, this is a one unit operation basically, not three. Merck Sharp and Dome had one Mylan matrix. They had then the follow-up of their form of Calitra after this was possible to use as a generic. Then you see companies like Teva and Novartis with products coming out which have been partially transfer of product, and some other companies. So you see in the early days, everybody started in this part with a unit operation or with two or three together. Then it was much later, and this is now the point why the Vertex case is not too easy to compare. This was many unit operations. This was basically powder to a finished product. This was then the rise of continuous in the discussion. But what was meant was not continuous manufacturing per se, it was continuous pharmaceutical manufacturing. This is a small notation, what Eli Lilly and Janssen did, etc. So recently also in Japan this got prominent cases. If I map this all out, And these are all marketed products. I have a long list, and I saw this on this list in the timeline, say, hey, there's some difference. There's something in, and you could see, and this brings me back to this conference, that in the early days, these scientists, they have not used this technology because of the sake of being continuous, really. This was an argument. This was an additional byproduct. But their intrinsic idea was that this technology is enabling their product. And now if you look further in the discussion, why is this not more frequently adapted continuous, and why does nobody so easily change a product made on batch to conti? I would say it makes sense, because you should consider continuous manufacturing in the early stage of your development of the product. If continuous becomes the enabling element, it's no question anymore downstream whether this makes sense or not. All the successful products, I forgot one, Oikrias from Novartis. This is also such a case. Nobody talks about it. Novartis has a huge initiative with MIT doing what is called here end-to-end. They never talked about their most prominent and best case example in their own house, which was actually the Oikrias case. Successfully running with 6 systems, 80 kilo per hour. Nobody talks about this. This is a success story in their own house. Because you needed this technology. Nobody considered this as being continuous, actually, but it is. If you look to the Oikrias case, I have a picture. I think this comes next. All these bubbles, all these companies here, and each of them, believe me, has a name, because I track them as much as I can see them. I count them. I say each, and then somebody asked me, Richard, why do we not see more of continuous in this world? I say, hey, wow, this looks pretty busy to me. It is already happening. It is already going on. And I heard it here in this conference as well. Whether this is a melt granulation or whatever is behind spray drying, this is a continuous process, if you will. The next level is just to link it up to something else. So where's the big fuss about it? It happens, and it happens daily, weekly. I get somebody new. These are my timelines I'm working on. But this shows you, there's no vertex. This just came later. And this is what you can find in magazines today when they start, oh, there are maybe 12 or 14 or whatever products out there. No, 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 no. There are much more out there. You just don't name them like that because they are not unit operations put together? Question mark. Nonetheless, it's Conti, isn't it? So this is what I'm advocating for. And of course, we heard all of this, and I don't want to go in all of these details. It has a lot of massive advantages and opportunities. If this is from the application, if this is from the dosage forms, the recipes, the processes, we have heard all of this from the great engineers and scientists before my speech. What I want to say and achieve with that is the idea that continuous manufacturing is not just to put unit operations meaningfully together. It's more. An intrinsic continuous process is fastly reacting to change of the parameter, and not just after hours. To control your process in the narrow range of what is accepted needs fast reacting unit operations. One of my university professors asked me, when is a continuous process a perfect process? How can you see that? Question. How can you see that if you go in a room and you see equipment? No surge hoppers, no tanks in between. One goes flawlessly in the other. Highly integrated. And this was actually the visionary point of what I showed you as a first picture. Of course, this was a vision at this time, but I think we are now 30 years beyond that and still working and discussing about all of these topics. They used most likely USP 905. Yeah, they did nothing else. That they kept, you know, in these early days, all of the products I mentioned to you, they have been established, they have been run because they haven't changed the quality management systems around. They just moved it in, say, this is now my unit operation. And if you look to the few cases of continuous manufacturing in the generics, the same thing. These companies only switched on areas where they had quality issues and where they found that a continuous process could fix and help them to fix this quality issue. But nonetheless, they did their typical release testing as before. This just came later with PAT. Okay, I want to conclude as time is progressing. Sorry for taking too long, but this is what I wanted to show. This is Oikria's machine. So there's a twin screw, before that a feeder, mixer, and then a cooling tower, and then it goes into a dry mill, and after this into a compression machine. It's a perfect continuous process, set up in 2000 something. Nobody complained that there's no guidelines or whatever. Controlled by residence time distribution models and everything as you want. Oikrias, just to name one of them. So I go quickly through. Usually, you can read this, you get this in the documentation. My topic is actually already addressed. You have so many possibilities in the dosage forms. You can pick and choose today. Of course, and this is the thing, the scientists, and Jim did a very nice job to say manufacturability, not just bioavailability, but you have in the birth of the product to consider what technology to use, and then the rest will fall into place. But don't do it later, it will be difficult and cumbersome. Intake, so oops, many more. Sustainability, maybe last one, footprint, we touched on this. It's a topic if you go into business case discussions today. I just want to encourage you, it's worthwhile a calculation because sustainability is a topic and will remain a topic. With melt extrusion as well as spray drying, you can do a quite big step forward in making it easier and more, successful finally. The business cases have been already shown. This has been done. Okay, with that, quick. Oh, wow, more to come. I left this for you. You can read all of this. Thank you for your attention. And keep this picture in mind. This has influenced myself, and I hope you take this as a message back home. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. So, any questions before we have a quick break? Mr. Nguyen? No? All right.
Thank you.
I'm going to just... Yes.